Good afternoon. This is Charles Finch. This is the first live streaming we've ever done, and I'm actually doing it in partnership with my wife, Ellen Nixon Finch, and there she is with her bright smile, waving to you because she will actually have a part in this presentation. Well, it's not really a presentation; it's more like a discussion. We haven't ever done this before exactly, but it is being done for a discussion about a very special event that we organized and put on. This is the first live streaming we've ever done, and I'm actually doing it in partnership with my wife, Ellen Nixon Finch. There she is, with her bright smile, waving to you because she will actually have a part. Should I just start over again? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to continue from where we left off. We were getting some feedback that we weren't supposed to have, and we're going to talk about several things. The first thing we're going to talk about is the organization created by myself and my wife, a foundation really called the Cosaan Foundation. But before we even start that, we're going to talk about my meetings and subsequent interactions in relationship to Maam Fatou Seck, an Ndepp from Senegal. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means or what that is, okay? That first happened in 1989. We actually met her not in Senegal, but in our home when she was actually brought to meet us by Sarah McGee, a friend of ours or somebody we knew from New Jersey, who met Fatou Seck, was the first African American we think to have ever met Fatou Seck, and brought her to the States and subsequently brought her to Atlanta, where we met her for the first time in 1989. I subsequently, let's see, is that right? No, I'm sorry, it was 1986, excuse me. It was actually 1986. And we met her here at that time with her one daughter. And 3 years later, I went to Senegal, where I met her again and started a long, ongoing relationship with her. I went back to Senegal because I was the principal investigator of a knowledge, attitudes, and practices survey among an ethnic group in Senegal called the Serer people. And it was a knowledge, attitudes, and practice survey of their traditional healing practices. And one of the things that I did while there was reacquaint myself with Madame Fatou Seck. Need to say a little bit about her right now, and we'll say more about her as we go through this live streaming. She was an Ndepp. She died in 1998. An Ndepp means that she is a priestess, in her case, a high priestess of the Senegalese spiritual tradition, actually cultural tradition, known as Ndepp. Ndepp. That's what it's called among the Senegalese. She was not only a priestess, she was an extremely gifted healer and seer, extraordinarily gifted healer and seer. By the time we met her in 1986, she had been carrying on her work for 40 plus years and had healed untold numbers of people through her particular methodology, through Ndepp. And we're going to talk about that as we go along. And so it wasn't my first introduction to Senegal. I had been to Senegal 3 times before, and wasn't even my first introduction to traditional healers in Senegal. But it is clear, or I should say, it's very evident that the significant interaction was with her, and from that point on, and we'll talk about this more. In 1996. We were able to invite her and organize a trip here with her and her Ndepp. Ndepp are priestesses of Ndepp. Not just priestesses, they are also healers by definition. And most of these were her daughters and nieces, although there are other women who are Ndepp, a few men, not that many, but they do exist. And she sort of brought her family, you might say, here to the United States in 1996 for an 8-day healing ceremony, that we call Coumba Lamba USA, and we will talk about Coumba Lamba USA during this live streaming. It was the first time, as far as we know, in history that a authentic African traditional healing ceremony, or at least one from Senegal, was ever brought to this country and conducted and undertaken exactly as it's done in Senegal. We didn't leave anything out, and we will see that as we go through our discussion today. And over the 8-day period, somewhere between 700 and 800 people came. And we will talk about that as we go along. At that time, by 1996, she was 100 years old, even well over 100 years old. And she had an immense reputation as a healer, as a seer, and as a priestess, as a spiritual practitioner. And if you were ever in her presence, you could understand why. She was an extremely powerful person. One of the most, if not the most spiritually powerful person I ever met. And within 2 years after that, though, she did pass on. But I might say at least a 10 to 12 year relationship with her, because I went back and forth to Senegal, and I would see her and her family each time, and I would participate in their ceremonies. And in fact, I would not only be an observer, but I would actually be called upon to participate in their ceremonies. So I knew something about their ceremonies and what they did prior to Coumba Lamba USA in 1996. In fact, it was her who, you might say, put the idea into my head to bring her and that ceremony over here to the United States. There were two other persons involved in undertaking that ceremony or implementing it. One was Dr. Virginia Davis Floyd, and her role was absolutely essential because she actually did most of the fundraising. She actually had most of the fundraising connections, and she did most of the fundraising that enabled us to bring not only Fatou Seck, but her drummers and her Ndepp here for that 8-day period. Actually, they stayed for about 2 weeks, so it was not a small undertaking. And so she was one of the prime movers, the other prime movers, in bringing Fatou Seck here for Coumba Lamba USA. The third one was none other than my wife Ellen, sitting next to me, which is one of the reasons why she is next to me, because she's going to provide a perspective about Coumba Lamba USA and her part in it. What she did was actually kind of the nuts and bolts organizing of the actual ceremonial and administrative, we won't say issues, but requirements to get that ceremony done. She did the unsung things that were absolutely needed to keep it going, organizing and arranging and adjusting everything as things went by. So it was kind of, like I said, a tripod, a pillar, a three-way tripod. There was myself, there was Dr. Virginia Floyd, and then there was Ellen, my wife. And we were the three prime organizers of the Coumba Lamba USA. As I said, it was unusual, unique in fact. The other thing that was unique about it, and this sort of just happened as it went along during the implementation phase, is that we brought in other traditions. Native American ones, for example. There was at least three, maybe four different Native American peoples and traditions represented. There were the Tlingit from Alaska. There was two Iroquois representatives. There was a Choctaw, and also there was a Native Hawaiian, who was there. And they not only did they participated, but sort of in a connected, those side arenas, they also performed ceremonies of their own. You might say that kind of amplified everything that was going on. So it was unusual and unique from not only a standpoint of just bringing this ceremony here, but to interface and interlink ceremonies from traditional peoples, really from widely different parts of the world. That was the unique part of it. And also to bring Africans, on the one hand, African spiritual healers and practitioners, and creating an interface between them and Native American ones. So that was the other unusual thing about it. Not only that, there was one or two other African traditions represented. Dr. John Ume from Nigeria, from the Dibia tradition among the Igbo, was there. And we had some other very, very outstanding practitioners and seers who were actually African American. The most extraordinary one was Coumba Lamba, one of the most gifted seers I've ever encountered. She too, unfortunately, has passed on. So you can see that it was quite a extraordinary, interesting, and complex affair in the realm of traditional medicine, traditional healing. As I say, as far as I know, the first time anything like that had ever been attempted or accomplished. And like it has continued, you might say, to reverberate down even to the present day. There are a lot of people who have said that they were at Coumba Lamba USA, and I even wonder sometimes if there are people telling me that they were there who may not have actually been there. But that's neither here nor there. But there's always, even now, people who talk about that event and talk about that experience and the way in which it sort of reshaped, their way of the path of life that they were undertaking at that time. Because, as I say, it was in its way, it was a unique experience. Another person who was there, I should mention him. I have to mention him because he's the one that organized the African phase of it, was Dr. Eric Bodosu. Eric Bodosu is actually from the country of Benin. He's from the Popo people of Western Benin, and therefore he was a practitioner and adept in Vodou. Interesting. He is also a physician, an MD, but he lives and works in Senegal, which is kind of interesting. And he organized a group of traditional healers among the Serer people in the central part of Senegal into what is called the Mongo Traditional Healers Association. So he was deeply involved in traditional medicine and spirituality, both from the point of view of from his own country and culture and peoples, but also that of Senegal. And is in fact the founder and organizer of Prometra, the association for the promotion of traditional medicine. I think there are 23 or 24 chapters in Africa and even in the Caribbean. He was another major, shall we say, mover and shaker in making this happen. So as I say, it was a lot involved, a lot of people involved, a lot of hands, you might say. But as I say, it was basically three persons who undertook the most important or most effective parts of getting this done. So that is what I can say about Fatou Seck. I should say that even before Coumba Lamba USA, she made 2, maybe even 3 visits. She made 3 visits to the United States, twice as our guest, even before Coumba Lamba USA, in which she met a whole lot of interesting people. She was over at Morehouse College, Spelman College, met the president of Spelman at that time, Janetta Cole. She was at the guest of Dr. Lawrence Carter of the King Chapel. So, I mean, and she, shall we say, made an impact wherever she went. She was that kind of person. And then there were dozens, scores, maybe even 100 or more people who came to see her, to consult her, actually consult her. So she didn't just stay here. She didn't just come here, you might say, as a tourist or as a visitor. She came here and actually did her own work here. And so had kind of established somewhat of a name in certain circles, even before Coumba Lamba USA in 1996. Now, related to that, in fact, what I'm getting ready to talk about now is the Cosaan Foundation. This is a foundation still in existence. Now it still exists, still operating, still active, founded by myself and my wife. My wife sitting next to me. Cosaan comes from a Wolof word, Wolof being Senegalese. Wolof is the national language of Senegal. Even though there are 5 major ethnic groups in Senegal, 90% of the people, no matter what ethnic group they come from in Senegal, speak Wolof. Okay, Cosaan is a word that has several different meanings. It means tradition. It means spiritual. It means history, tradition, spiritual custom, ancestral knowledge, all wrapped up into one word. And as we were in the early planning phases of Coumba Lamba USA, we obviously needed a foundation institution in order to carry that through. As it turned, we eventually did become a nonprofit foundation, and we gave it the name the Cosaan Foundation. And the Cosaan Foundation, though it was, shall we say, impelled by implementing the planning and implementation of Coumba Lamba USA, even from its beginning, we had a larger mission for it, okay? And that continues today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that the Cosaan Foundation mission and values are. nonprofit corporation to promote intercultural exchange between Africa and the Americas in the realm of art, music, dance, and ritual, to educate the communities of both continents about the impact of African traditions on the history and culture of the Americas through conferences, presentations, publications, workshops, and exhibits in the above sanctioned domains. To provide training, technical assistance, and research and service delivery around comparative health and development issues affecting underserved populations in Africa and the Americas. To foster research into trans-African historical migrations, healing traditions, linguistics, and cultural continuities in time and space through literature reviews and field studies. To support opportunities for cultural and academic exchange between Africa and America, including supervised study tours. And as I say, its first launched program was Coumba Lamba USA. It has continued, by the way, even to this to right now. We have done women's conferences, spiritual conferences, which my wife will talk about a little bit more, men's spiritual retreat, and our big major, shall we say, contributory effort was the recent Nile Valley Conference 2 that happened in, 2011 at Morehouse College. Cosaan was one of the major sponsors and funders of that conference. So as I say, and my wife will amplify on this, we continue to that very day. We go back to 1996, and we came into being through our efforts to organize the Coumba Lamba USA.
I am just going to butt in here to say that all during this webinar, you are encouraged to hit your donate tab on the Cosaan.org, CosaanFoundation.org tab, which you can access through the CharlesSFinch.com website as well. Anyone who donates today can still be entered into the drawing. It's not too late. So throughout this webinar today, you still have an opportunity to enter the drawing for the trip to Egypt. The trip to Egypt this summer, July 24th, right? July 24th to August the 4th. And we're very, very excited to offer this opportunity. It is within Cosaan's mission that you just heard. So we really want to make this possible for someone who might not have the funds to go. I need to point out, however, that it is not fully a cost-free trip. For instance, if you live in Kansas, you have to get yourself to New York and home again. So that part of the cost would be yours. Also, the government is in on it. As you know, the government's in on everything. So when there's a prize, there's a tax consequence to that. And we have to comply with the IRS rules for that. So if you're not interested in going into your pocket at all, perhaps you, if your name is drawn today, maybe you need to let us know that you are not interested so we can select someone else. So there are some minor costs, but the major cost of the trip is going to be completely at the donation of the Cosaan Foundation. So you still have time to enter. Just like some radio stations, we have our operators standing by to take your name, to take your get your name entered. So please, a donation of $2 or more will actually get you entered into our drawing this afternoon.
Let me just say one other thing about this upcoming study tour. It's called the Gift of the Nile Study Tour 2015. One of our, maybe the highlight of the trip is that we are going to spend 2 days at an active excavation site. The excavation of two tombs. One is called the tomb of Maam, who was a high priest of Amun during the 25th dynasty, and Karabaskin, who we're not sure what his relationship with, but he too was a priest. Those tombs are side by side. The excavation of those tombs is ongoing. We will stop there, spend 2 days there, watch, perhaps even participate. One of the things that was very exciting about the excavation last year, at the very last day, the exact last day of the excavation in September, they happened to kind of, what I want to say, dig a hole through a wall in the excavation in Karabaskin's tomb. And what did they find? They found a whole room full of mummies that they didn't expect. They didn't even know what was there. That's the fascinating thing about what's going on with these excavations, is that they're finding things that they don't expect, and it is possible for us to even, we will see this as part of this upcoming Nile Valley Conference tour. Nile Valley Tour, Gift of the Nile, 2015. Okay, and that so yes. We do hope that there will be more people to join us. There's still time to join the tour, whether you actually win the raffle today or not. It's an opportunity to go to Kemet, the Nile Valley, Egypt, is, if it's possible, is something that shouldn't be missed. It's an extraordinary experience. Things that you see there, you can't see anywhere else in the world, anywhere else. Okay, and but we're not going to talk that much about that, simply because we've talked about a lot of that already on previous webinars, and there are other webinars that will be coming up. I do want to kind of talk now a little bit more about Coumba Lamba, the Coumba Lamba USA, the legacy. And I'm actually going to read something. I don't usually like to read things, but I think I am going to do that this time. Okay. And this is what we're calling the Coumba Lamba USA. I don't like to do that on camera, but this is important enough that I would like to kind of get it across reading it this way. And then we actually got a video to show, right? That is a very short video, though, that captures what happened at Coumba Lamba USA at St. Helena Island, South Carolina. Coumba Lamba USA, the legacy. For people of African descent in the Western Hemisphere, survival, even in attenuated form, of African ritual and medicine has constituted their sole linkage to their ancestral continent. The linkage has persisted unconsciously through the survival of these ancestral rituals and practices. However, over the last generation in the diaspora, there has emerged a conscious movement to reacquire the spiritual connection that was lost. Consequently, in recent years, increasing numbers of persons of African descent have made the pilgrimage home to Africa to build bridges reconnecting the old land with the new world. It has been a two-way bridge. In August of 1996, funded by multiple public and private donors, Coumba Lamba USA, the first complete and authentic African, that is Senegalese, traditional healing ceremony ever known to be held on U.S. shores, was conducted on St. Helena Island, South Carolina. Over the course of 8 days, more than 700 people attended, igniting a wave of interest and rediscovery that has continued to expand to the present day. African spirituality and healing is finding an accepted place in the lives of diasporic African descendants and in North America. Coumba Lamba USA was one of the prime catalysts of this trend. And I just may reiterate that also applies to Native American healing and spiritual traditions as well. You might say that Coumba Lamba USA brought that to the attention of many African Americans almost for the first time. Not that it was just a matter of that has not been a perspective, wasn't up until that time, of most African Americans. But after Coumba Lamba USA, there was a noted spike in interest in the traditions and practices of Native American traditional healers. Now, I think
The video?
Yes, and then the slideshow. What is that? Show you that first? Oh, yes, I do. We want to show the video, and then I'll get it.
Okay. So we have a brief video from Coumba Lamba. This should really take some of you back if you attended Coumba Lamba You really will get a little bit of a feel for the excitement, some people will tell you there was just something in the air, literally something very electric in the air all the time. Something was happening all the time. Exciting things were happening. Miracles were happening. It was a very, very special week. And if you attended, you'll never forget it. And is it going to happen again?
We have just started discussing that. And I think our definite perspective is that in 4 or 5 years, it will probably be time to repeat it. If only because there is a tremendous, it just seems to be anyway, a tremendous interest in bringing it back and doing it again and kind of going further with it and further with our experiences in African spirituality. So I think the tentative answer is yes, we will do it again. And in the coming months, say in a couple of years, we will make a definite decision. We are looking forward to it in about 4 or 5 years. It'll probably take that long to put everything in place if in fact we're going to do it. But so the answer is a tentative yes.
All right. I'm going to call on our technical advisor to help us launch the video. And I'll deal with that. I have one, if you are mailing your donation in through the regular U.S. mail, if you are writing a check, the check should be made to the Cosaan Foundation. That is spelled C-O-S-A-A, 2 A's, 1 S and 2 A's, C-O-S-A-A-N Foundation, Inc. Make your donation. If you are making a donation through the donation tab, and that's the way we are doing it today, we're just asking for donations, you are then going to be entered into the drawing. So we encourage you to donate, because Cosaan is revving up again. You know, Dr. Finch and I have been busy since Coumba Lamba. We've been finishing educating our 7 children. We've been involved in numerous activities and just going to work every day, like many of you are. So it hasn't been easy to continue to do a great deal of our projects. But now that we are moving towards our senior years and looking towards doing things that are more meaningful to us, we are definitely going to have more activities from Cosaan and another Coumba Lamba USA. So please enjoy the video. Is it going to show it to us?
I just told you.
Is it showing to us?
From the beginning of time, in nearly all human cultures, the sound of drum serves as the language of the soul. Drums serve as a link between the present and the past. The sound of drums eloquently express feeling, the music of the senses. Things that we can feel but cannot say adequately with words. It is fitting and symbolic that drums set the tone here at the Penn Center on the island of St. Helena off the coast of South Carolina. These scenes are from an event of enormous significance. This is the first ever Ndepp traditional Senegalese healing ceremony to be held in America. You might wonder why the need for an African traditional healing ceremony on this peaceful sea island in South Carolina. What contributions can the traditional healing knowledge of Africans, Native Americans, Hawaiians, and other indigenous cultures make to medical science of today? The answer to this question can be found far from the shores of this peaceful sea island. Modern medicine is a huge industry consuming billions of dollars of the economy. While modern medicine is the primary source of health care for most of us, there is a worldwide hunger for information about alternative forms of care. This trend represents a worldwide revival of interest in the traditional healing knowledge of our forefathers, long forgotten and pushed aside by the technological and chemical advances of modern healthcare. Nowadays, we hear terms such as ethnic medicine, folk medicine, herbal healing, and holistic medicine. The forgotten knowledge of indigenous people provides a link to combining the strengths of both modern and traditional medicine. In an attempt to celebrate traditional knowledge and to restore a connection to ancestral healing wisdom, Morehouse School of Medicine and the Cosaan Foundation in Atlanta, Georgia, and other institutions joined forces to host Coumba Lamba USA, a healing rite in the tradition of Senegal, West Africa. At Coumba Lamba USA, healers from many different cultures convened in order to learn from one another, to experience spiritual and bodily healing.
Healing is the restoration of the balance among all the forces that impact human life. That is the biophysical forces, the emotional forces, psychological, social, familial, natural, spiritual, and cosmic. All those are forces that directly impact human life individually and collectively. The healer addresses those forces. He and or she brings those forces back into balance to affect the healing process, which also, I might add, is a transformational process. Curing occurs as a consequence of that healing intervention. I guess that's what did it. Okay, we're starting over.
Which is ethnic medicine, folk medicine, herbal healing.
It's the biophysical forces, the emotional forces, psychological, social, familial, natural, spiritual, and cosmic. All those are forces that directly impact human life individually and collectively. The healer addresses those forces. He and or she brings those forces back into balance to affect the healing process, which also, I might add, is a transformational process. Curing occurs as a consequence of that healing intervention.
Cette plante, par exemple, c'est une plante très utile. Son emploi chez les femmes qui font des avortements à répétition ou des enfants morts-nés à répétition.
It's good. It's really good for miscarriages or for women whose babies are born and die right away.
Ça, c'est un nid d'oiseau.
This is a bird nest.
C'est curieux. La plante ici n'est plus utile. Elle devient utile parce qu'il est nid d'oiseau.
And the plant itself is only useful because it's a bird nest.
Et parce qu'il a un nid d'oiseau, il peut soigner beaucoup d'affections qui sont dites psychosomatiques.
And because it's a bird nest, it can heal many mental disorders.
Surtout celles qui concernent les affections conflictuelles entre les familles.
Especially the conflicts between families.
Symbolism is found throughout the Coumba Lamba ceremony. The milk bath is the first cleansing component of the ritual. Participants are bathed in curdled milk that has been mixed with special plants and immersed with prayers. Milk, of course, invokes the mother-child connection, and the symbolism is deliberate. The process of releasing negative energies in ceremonial participation through the Great Mother is the ritual of life, death, and rebirth.
So my perspective is the perspective of the tribal mind, which looks at the big cycles of time. And as I understand it from my oral history, the reason that gatherings like this are happening, intercultural gatherings of people that have never come together before culturally for more than 500 years, the reason that this is happening is that it's time for it to happen. And the evidence that it's time for it to happen can be found in our oral histories, in the wampum belts, in the pyramids of Mexico and Egypt. And some tribes call it the new sun, other tribes call it the seventh fire. But whatever we call it, we all have an understanding that this moment would come when the peoples, the ancient cultures and peoples of the world would reunite. And the ancient peoples actually includes everybody, black, white, red, and yellow, because the white people also have a tribal mind and a medicine wheel to take care of if they remember, and we need them to remember.
More in each cup now. More in each cup? Yeah. Try to use what we got there. Now we got another cup to fill down here.
When you use the devil club, you can use it so many different ways. It heals scar tissues, a big knife cut maybe. And I've seen this heal a bullet wound.
And I've had people come to me that had cancer and other incurable diseases that they say that they are. And talk to me, and many of them discovered well. Just living in Atlanta for a couple of years now. There's a woman that come to me that had breast cancer, and they were going to operate on her and remove one of them. And right at the last moment, she came to me in desperation, and we talked, and I talked with her and did the healing. And when this was on a Sunday and Wednesday, when she was supposed to have the operation, they couldn't find any cancer.
Will come.
At Coumba Lamba USA, there was teaching, healing, learning, dancing, drumming, meditation, prayer. There was a collective healing presence. Over 10 days on the pastoral island of St. Helena's historic Penn Center, against the backdrop of history that speaks of the Middle Passage and the Trail of Tears, among the natural beauty of sprawling oak trees and hanging Spanish moss native to the sea islands, over 600 people gathered to commune with ancient healing spirits. Traditional healing and indigenous science is a vast storehouse of knowledge that can be used to relieve suffering, improve people's lives, and expand our boundaries of understanding. The end of Coumba Lamba is in every sense a beginning and a continuation. The learning and exchange of knowledge between healers from many different disciplines and cultures enhances the range of choices available to people in their efforts to maintain a balance between the spirit and the body, to maintain a harmony between the self and the cosmic. Coumba Lamba is a significant milestone along the road toward collective healing and restoration of the forgotten knowledge and wisdom of mankind. We ask for your understanding and support. We ask you to open your minds and hearts to help the work of Indigenous people recapture the knowledge of our forefathers and mothers, to combine this Indigenous science with today's modern healthcare, to build a bridge to collective healing, to help us train healthcare providers throughout the world in this holistic healing approach. We ask that you join us on that path as we seek continued support for this very important work, the work of healing our world.
Yes, that was as I say, that was a 10-minute segment from film segment of Coumba Lamba USA, and I think though short, it captured the event. It was Dr. Floyd, by the way, one of our co-sponsors, one of our, as I say, gang of three who implemented the whole thing. Who was doing the narration. And now we're trying to get to there's a slide presentation we want to show you.
Dr. Finch is going to share with you some of his interaction with Maam Fatou Seck, the chief priestess of the group in Senegal that practiced in Ndepp back in the 90s. One of her daughters is leading that now. Dr. Finch went to Senegal a number of times for the Coumba Lamba healing ceremony. And he's going to share with you some of those experiences. They're very powerful, life-changing experiences. Another thing that he might share with you today is actually something that we are introducing for the very first time. Many of you are always wondering when something different is coming out by Dr. Finch, and something different has come out. It is a collection of poems that Dr. Finch has written, some about some of the mother figures of many traditions. He's written some about the Nile River, and some just about thoughts that came to him while staring at the sky, basically. In any case, we didn't know that he had the talent of being a poet along with his other many talents, but here it is. And so anyone who makes a donation today of greater than $10 will receive a free download of the poems. A free download of these poems being actually released for the first time. So that will be made available to anyone who donates to Cosaan in an amount of $10 or more. And this will continue. It's not just for today. It will continue over the next several months, that we will offer this collection of poems for donations of $10 or more to Cosaan. And the donations that you make are tax deductible. There's not really a cost to this download, so that's not really taking away from your donation. So we are a 501c3 organization. Your donation will be tax deductible, and the download will be made available to you. If for some reason you're having trouble with that, getting the download, as always, if you contact support@charlessfinch.com, support@charlessfinch.com, our technical advisor will be very, very happy to assist you in getting that download. So we're very excited about that.
What we're going to do now is to go through to do a slide presentation of PowerPoint on Coumba Lamba USA, and Ndepp healing ceremony in America. And when we finish, we actually might recite a couple of these poems. We're not going to recite all of them, but a couple of them to kind of give some indication of the nature of these poems and how they were informed by my experiences, especially in the 90s with traditional healers, women traditional healers mostly, and how they became, you might say, they manifested, remanifested in poetry. But first, let's look at this presentation, Coumba Lamba USA, the Ndepp healing ceremony in America, 1996. We've already seen her on the video that we just saw, Maam Fatou Seck in 1996. 100-year-old at that time, she was 100 years old, or maybe even older than 100 years old. Ndepp, as you see spelled up there at the top of the slide, which means basically priestess or healer, if you like, from Senegal, from the Lebu people of Senegal. Let me say a little bit about the Lebu, L-E-B-U. Lebu is the name of this ethnic group. They are kind of a branch of the Wolof, or seemingly so, and they inhabit Cap Vert. Cap Vert is the westernmost part of Senegal, includes Dakar. And there are, I don't know, between 2 and 4 million Lebu there in that part of Senegal. They say that they originally came from Libya. And what is interesting is that Lebu, the word Lebu, is actually an Egyptian word. It's spelled exactly the same way. In other words, if you take the Egyptian hieroglyphics and transliterate them into English, the word is exactly the same, L-E-B-U. And it means two things. It means Libya, back 3,000-4,000 years ago, and Libya is the Greek name for Lebu, given to that area that we now know as Libya by the ancient Egyptians. It is also a word that meant lion. So Libya, or Lebu, and lion mean the same thing. It's interesting because the Lebu, especially Fatou Seck, were particularly fond of cats. Not only that, twice I was able to witness something called the lion game among the Lebu. It's where two men, actually three, dress up as lions and kind of go through, you might say, a pantomime, if you will, a lion pantomime. And they involve the audience or the people watching them. And it's clear that there is a connection to lions and cats also. So when they say they came from Libya, there's also a connection that takes them all the way back to ancient Egypt, basically. The Lebu would have inhabited back in 4,000 years ago, would have inhabited the Western Desert, which is where Western Desert, that is to say west of Egypt, and that is basically the country of Libya today, okay? And this is what they look like back then, okay? You think of Libya and you think of Gaddafi and people who look like Gaddafi. They didn't look like that then. They look like what you're looking at right now. You can't hear it? It's not moving. Okay. We're having more technical difficulties on this occasion than before, but we will kind of work through them with our technical advisor. All right. So I think you heard my point about the label of today, the label of ancient times, same people, but this is what they look like then. This is what they look like now. Their relationship to what we today call Libya and to the lions. Lions, you might say, might have been a kind of a cultural totem. Let's talk about the Robs of the Lebu pantheon. All right, the Robs are the same as what we would call the Orishas among the Yoruba, the Abosum among the Akan, the Vodun in Togo and Benin. They are the powers, you might say the African powers, or the Nomo among the Dogon, or the Netheru among the ancient Egyptians. And there are hundreds actually, there are hundreds of Robs, but there are 7 major ones, 7 major Lebu Robs, okay? At the top of the pantheon, at the summit of the pantheon is Maam Coumba Lamba. She is the supreme Rob of the ocean. Then there is Matulify, who is the Rob of the Muslims. Nak Dawurumbai is the Rob of Dakar, the capital city of Senegal, and really kind of one of the major cities for the Lebu as well. Njare, who is a daughter of Coumba Lamba and the Rob of the rivers and fresh waters. Maam Ngwesu, Rob of the griots. Mbasi, he's actually related to Friday. I'm not sure exactly the significance of that, but he's related to Friday. And that may have to do with the day, the sacred day for Muslims. Maam Masambadoy, he is the messenger of the Robs, and he's a lover of spirituous beverages. So he would be like somebody like Elegba, for example, among the Vodou, among the Orishas. These are the 7 major Robs. And you see, the Robs are the powers that are invoked during the healing process. You can't have any healing without the intercession of the Robs. We've seen a little bit of this. This is just sort of what we're looking at in slide form, in a static photo, spirit dancing, Coumba Lamba USA. Again, all of this is in South Carolina, St. Helena Island, South Carolina. Drumming and dancing for the Robs, as we saw in the video. The thing is, these are individuals dancing before the drums. In other words, if you are in the process of praying, or if you're in the process of invoking the deity, or if you're in the process of being healing, the dancing, the vigor of the dancing is going to make it's going to make your intercession that much more powerful. So you not only do the dancing, you have to dance as vigorously as possible. And so that you actually dance in front of the drums. You're dancing to the drums and with the drums, and that's what you see these 2 individuals doing. Slideshow is not going. You want to go there? I want the slideshow to be on. Yeah. Now, after that, the other thing, and this is very important, these dances are often very circular, okay? But they always move in a counterclockwise rotation, okay? Whenever there's a group dance, you might say, what we saw before is individuals dancing at the drums and before the drums and to the drums, and also dancing for the Robs. But when the group of dancers, that is priestesses, dances, is always in this kind of circular fashion, always counterclockwise, which, by the way, is the way in which the axis of the earth moves. It moves in a counterclockwise direction. All the dances are counterclockwise. These are the hands of the Ndepp drummer in Coumba Lamba USA. Well, there is no Ndepp, there is no healing, there is no spiritual activity without the drums. The drums are essential. And these are very powerful drummers. They don't just pick it up one day and start drumming. They actually have to go through an apprenticeship that can last 3 to 4 years. And it is said a master drummer can by himself, and in Africa it always is a him. Now we have women drummers here in the diaspora, but in Africa I have never seen a woman drummer, at least not one who was used in ceremony. So it is always a him. And they say a master drummer can heal and he can make someone sick. So they're very powerful, not just as drummers and musicians, but as healers and spiritual practitioners themselves. Hands on the drummer. This is divination. Divination, again, is essential to the practice of Ndepp and every African traditional healing ceremony tradition that I know about. Cowrie shells are almost invariably used in nearly all of the West African systems in one way or the other. Those who are familiar with the Yoruba tradition know about Ifa, using the apele belt with cowrie shells attached to them. And we could say a lot about the cowrie shells in and of itself, but nothing happens without divination in the African traditional healing ceremonies. And that is Ndepp is no exception. And whenever there's a consultation, Fatou Seck always resorted to the cowrie shells in this circular mat that you see in her hands. And that is her sitting there with her hands around the mat in the process of divining through the cowrie shells. Sacrifice is also an essential part of African, West African especially, spiritual practices. And there is no West African traditional or African traditional system that I know of that does not involve or practice sacrifice. What is interesting about the label is that there's a strong emphasis on bull sacrifice, especially for major spiritual events or major healing. Because you see, there's a kind of hierarchy of sacrifice, from a pigeon to a chicken to a rooster to a goat to a bull. The bull is the highest level of sacrifice because the bull is powerful. And so it's a more powerful sacrifice, and the blood of the bull, and there's no getting around it. The blood of the sacrifice animal is essential to what the sacrifice means. Now, I always tell Christians who object to the idea of sacrifice, I says, well, that's basically what Jesus was. And Jesus called himself a sacrifice. So the idea is that all life, in one way or another, emerges out of a process of sacrifice. Every time you eat something, especially if you eat meat, fish, meat, poultry, you are participating in a sacrifice. You're participating in an animal that has given its life to feed you. Even if you eat vegetables or fruit, those come from living things, living plants. In other words, it always has to be something living that feeds you in order for you to survive. So even the plant, you might say, is making a sacrifice. In any case, this sacrifice gets to be very literal and definite in African traditional religion, and it's ubiquitous. You don't find it. I don't know of an African traditional religion or spiritual practice that does not do sacrifice. And as I say, among the Lebu, among the Rabs, the bull is the highest level the most powerful level of sacrifice. Now, this is another thing. We're looking at some of the essential elements of traditional African religion. This is possession. This is descent of Mama Sambandoi. Mama Sambandoi is the messenger of the Rabs. He is like Elegba among the Vodou, or Eshu among the Yoruba. All right, and the woman here is Kodumbup, and she is a griot, and she is being possessed by Mama Sambandoi. Okay, because that is her Rab. In the African system, everybody is connected to a Rab. Everybody is linked to a Rab. Everybody belongs, you might say, to a Rab, and that Rab belongs to you as well. At certain times during ceremony, the Rab will come down and possess his or her devotee specifically. It's interesting, and it's kind of humorous sometimes, is that when you're in the ceremony and there are a bunch of people standing around watching, then the drums will start, because it's always the drums that summons the Rabs, and you'll see people running as fast as they can out of the arena and away from the whole process, because they don't want to be possessed. They know if they stay, the Rab will possess them, and they just don't want to be possessed at that moment, so they run. They get out of there, you see that every time, because it's always the drums that summon the Rabs. It shows you another way It indicates another way in which the drums are powerful, extremely powerful, and essential to the whole process. And they actually can bring these spiritual powers, these spiritual entities down into the healing arena and into the people themselves. So, and this is an example of that possession. You can see that she's wet. She has poured Sprite over herself. She's Muslim, so they don't pour any alcohol, but they will use Sprite. Why? Because Mama Samandoy, that's what he likes. He likes liquids. He likes fluids. He likes either liquor, and if you're a Muslim, you pour Sprite over yourself or ginger ale, mostly Sprite. And you can see that she has poured, you didn't actually see her do it, but you can see that she's wet. She has poured the Sprite over her head and over her body because that is what he takes. That's what he drinks. So that's and this is again, this is an essential element in any African traditional spiritual tradition, and Ndepp is no exception. What you find, and what I have found over the years, is that the difference in practices among different West African peoples, in terms of their indigenous spiritual traditions, seem to be more a matter of language and emphasis. All of the elements, though, seem to be present in all of these religions, from the Senegal River in the north to the Congo River in the south. If you look very carefully, the attributes of their deities, their practices, their beliefs, their customs, their symbols, their archetypes, their myths are almost identical, even though they might be separated by 2,000 or 3,000 miles, even though they are different ethnic groups, different languages, supposedly different histories. So it shows you that they are branches off a common trunk that comes from farther to the east. This is, again, a ceremony of healing and initiation, Coumba Lamba USA. Those are the Ndepp surrounding this woman, okay? Initiation, that's one of the things, the other thing you learn. In Africa, or at least in West Africa, healing and initiation use exactly the same ceremony. There is no difference between it, because I've seen a healing ceremony and I've seen an initiation ceremony, and the processes, the steps, the elements are exactly the same in each. So healing and initiation are, in effect, the same thing. So if you are healed, you are initiated. If you are initiated, you are healed. In fact, you are very, in West Africa, you are not uncommonly called to the healing work yourself by an illness. So you have to be healed of that illness, and that healing of that illness is your initiation, and you yourself have to become a healer. Praise song from Coumba Lamba USA, of course, singing, and you're singing in praise, and you're singing in praise of the Creator too. Now you're not just singing; you are singing in praise of the Robs and the powers, but you got to understand, among the Ndepp, they're all very devout Muslims. So they say, we do not worship the Robs. We only worship Allah. But the Robs are doing the work of Allah. Allah has empowered the Robs to do his work. So when you sing to the Robs, you are singing to Allah. And when you sing to Allah, you're singing to the Robs. And singing, especially praise songs, just like we do in church. When you sing to God or Jesus or whatever religion you belong to, it's the same thing. There's no difference. It's, in fact, it's fascinating to me the way in which religions, no matter what they are or where they are in the world, some of the elements are exactly the same. And I wonder, I said, so why are people of different religions slaughtering each other over supposed differences that don't really exist? Nonetheless, praise singing in Coumba Lamba USA. That's one of the things we're going to do a little later on. My poems that we're going to read, a couple of them anyway, are praise songs. These are, again, the label Ndepp, Coumba Lamba USA. All of them, with the exception of the lady in the lower left corner, are either daughters or, no, that's not quite true. 3 of them are her daughters, and 1 of them is her niece, Kodum Boop, who is in the middle on the right, is the griot. She's Ndepp, but not related to Fatou Seck, and Ngom at the bottom left is also not related to Fatou Seck, but all the rest of them are her daughters or her nieces. And they were all there at Coumba Lamba USA. So there was 2, 3, 7 Ndepp, and there were about that many drummers. during those 8 days. Yes. This is the closing dawn prayer by Eric Bodosu. This is Eric Bodosu, who I've already mentioned, at the seaside, Coumba Lamba, USA. Standing at the ocean. I mean, you have, when you're doing a ceremony on behalf of or related to Coumba Lamba, you have to do it at or very near the ocean because that is her element. And so this was a final prayer at the ocean, at dawn. And so you're actually watching, as this prayer, you're actually watching the sun come up from behind the waters. It is very, as was everything in those 8 days, it was a very, very strong and powerful moment. Not only by him, because Eric Bodosu, as I've already said, is himself a practitioner. He's himself a priest. He's also a doctor. And if you remember in the video clip that we saw, he was the one that was talking about the various herbs and what they did, and especially one about a bird's nest and how that a bird's nest itself has healing properties. If you remember that from the that video, that's him. As I say, he is a man of many, many strengths and talents, and he's the one who led the final prayer. Okay, I think that's it for our slideshow. As I say, what we're going to do now, we are going to do a couple of the praise song poems. Okay. Yeah, I want a second one, so just choose one. All right, I haven't committed these in memory. I did compose them in the 90s mostly. I think some of them were composed after the turn of the century. There's only, I don't even know how many there are, actually. I should count them. I just don't even know. There's 8 of them, and 6 or 7 of them are I call them goddess poems, or praise songs, okay? This is actually called Coumba Lamba Ndoy. Maam Coumba Lamba Ndoy. That's her full name, Coumba Lamba Ndoy. All right, that's the supreme Rob of the pantheon, whose element is the ocean. We've already talked about already. I sing a prayer to Coumba Lamba Ndoy, great mistress of the Robs, mother of joy, wellspring and fountain of the liquid depths, for all waters flow from the tears she has wept. Maam Coumba Lamba, the name of the nurse who frees her children from the barren curse. On the deserts of souls, her moistening rain cleanses our spirits of all blemish and pain. Maam Coumba Lamba, to a drummer's beat, glides down to her queendom and takes her seat. Her rapt devotees with more vigor they dance, and with a touch of her spirit fall down in a trance. I lift up my voice to Coumba Lamba Ndoy, who recreates the worlds from the ones we destroy. In the white of her spirit light and the blue of her deep, we dream dreams of paradise in the twilight of sleep. Maam Coumba Lamba, whose epic is nigh, as inexorably turn the heavens on high. She looks down upon us from her skyborn realm and sails gently the earth arc with her hand on the helm. Maam Coumba Lamba, who caresses the bull as he gives his head to the current's pull. He carries our wishes, our hopes, and our fears, and only she knows what secrets he hears. Fervent whispers I give to Coumba Lamba Ndoy. The cries from the heart are the words I employ. I'm a child of the mother who faces each dawn when pristine eyes open like a new spotted fawn. That's one. We'll do one more poem. And then I'll turn this over to Ellen. You too. Tell me. Just give me one. Give me one. Okay. This is the last one we'll do. This one is called The Lady of the Flowing Waters. I flow in African rivers, pools, and streams, immersed in the waters of baptismal consecration, where the eddying tides reflect the sunlit gleams, while she slakes my soul with an ancestral libation, veiled and swaddled in cavernous shells, cloaked in the white caps of a foamy sea. She waves and undulates in the ocean swells, and in an amniotic embrace she carries me. Lush and fresh, the sea breezes that sweeten the air and caress the waters where land and ocean merge. The salty seaweed tresses adorn her sea-tossed hair, dancing in the waves where tide and current surge. She is a nereid of the river and siren of the pools, a languorous mermaid basking in indolent grace. And under a showery broom, the day slowly cools. In a trice, she vanishes into the womb of liquid space. Sati, Tohosu, and Jade Oshun, names to haunt the springs I have known. Arbors arch over an interlacing festoon, but when the sigh escapes, the bird has flown. Fluid eyes smile a secret smile, an iridescent fire emits a poignant light. You might drown in the gaze of this phantom Nile, gushing out of the grottos of the teardrop night. Gently she pulls the rain from the consort clouds, and falling softly it fills the gushing firth, and disappearing under the flowery shrouds, the wide spacious bosom of an expectant earth.
So that's just a preview of the poems that are available with $10 donations to Cosaan. Not just today, but over the next several months. However, if you donate today, there's still time. There's still time to get entered into that drawing for the trip to Egypt. There's still time. We have people standing by ready to take your name and get you into our drawing jar. All right. I hope you had a sense from listening to those poems how poetry of just in a few words can produce an image that sometimes a narrative doesn't do or takes a lot more sentences to do. And with poetry, you can instantly be put there in just a few words, or you can almost be shifted into another reality. So a poem is something to enjoy, just like a song. Poetry and music are closely related that way. So we hope you will enjoy these praise poems. I am going to talk just very briefly about, about a couple of the other events that Cosaan has sponsored. Cosaan has sponsored 2 retreats for women. And the purpose of these retreats was to introduce the women that we invited to the divine feminine within them, and also the divine feminine outside. So remember that the divine is in 2 places. It's inside of you, and it's outside with a line to the creator all, who is all things, masculine, feminine, and yet there's these divisions. So it's very difficult to talk about the divine. Some people only think of it in terms of one type of being, and others think of it in terms of many different types of helper beings. If you think of saints, that kinds of gives you an idea of the sense of helper beings. So we're not really trying to we were not trying to evangelize anything in particular here with these retreats, mostly just to get people in touch with the idea that there are 2 principles out there, not just each one is in men as well as women. A man can be in touch with the feminine principle as well as a woman. But we in particular wanted women to begin to get a sense of the Divine Mother, the idea of some of the feminine principles, which included mother, sister, daughter, even grandmother, some of the animal figures that represent that type of maternal or feminine principle. Healing is a feminine principle. So we call these retreats when woman takes mother by the hand. And in the first retreat, we just had was really more like a conference. We had Dr. Finch talking about the matriarchy, and that's a very important point in beginning to understand the divine feminine. There was a time when women were the heads of things, and when women were female figures were the ones almost exclusively that were worshipped. So Dr. Finch talked about that period of human history, and then we actually did a shift and went on a nature walk. We went to connect to Mother Nature, and we went to a waterfall, and then we came back and did a kind of inward journey as we walked the labyrinth. And we also talked about what that divine feminine principle meant, as well as the masculine principle, because you have both of them going on in our lives all the time. And then our second retreat was called When Woman Takes Mother by the Hand, the Descent into the Cave, they Return to the Womb. We actually spent the night in DeSoto Caverns in a cave. And if anybody is on webinar who participated, you can remember that was a very, very powerful experience for us. We were connecting to the womb of Mother Earth and our own wombs and the wombs of our wombs. And it was just a time when we spent a lot of time in meditation. We did release. It was just a very different but very powerful experience for those women who attended. And we found that the spirit could come down on you, not just through drumming, but in an intense moment of gathering. We had several women had spirit come down on them and had experienced some very powerful healing in the cave at that time. So those were our two women's retreats. And then we did another kind of event in 2010, which was another type of healing event where we actually brought in individuals who were using energy and crystals to heal. So we called it a spiritual wellness retreat. We had spiritual readings, we had Reiki going on, we had crystal healing going on with an individual calls himself Yellow Horseman, who is here in North Georgia. We had Qigong with Dr. James Carter. We even had life coaching and numerology from Dr. Finch. We had spiritual reading going on with, unfortunately, the now deceased Coumba Lamba. And it was a very different kind of event, but we wanted people to begin to realize that that healing begins first within in the spirit, and then your body can mobilize to do the healing work. So many times you need to have a reading, as was done in our African spiritual ceremonies. Many times you need to have your energy aligned, and by the way, that can also happen through drumming and other, and dancing and other types of things, music as well. But we had these modalities present. We didn't have a sacrifice at this particular event. It was an indoor event, but it was very interesting, and we got good feedback from those who attended that event, and hopefully we may repeat that one of these days. We had a men's retreat, Dr. Finch.
Yes, we did have a men's retreat. We brought a Hawaiian kahuna, Hale Makua, to that retreat. Okay, we were trying to bring a Senegalese champion wrestler. You say, well, what does a wrestler have to do with spirituality? Well, that's why you have to understand what wrestling is in a place like Senegal. Wrestlers, especially a champion wrestler, is not only a physically proficient individual, he is also a spiritually powerful individual, and in fact is really a spiritual leader, and is looked on as such. So he's not only someone who has a physical presence, he also has a spiritual presence, because the way they wrestle in Senegal is that the night before the match, the two wrestlers go to sleep, and in their dreams they actually have the match while they're sleeping. Whoever wins the match in the dreams automatically wins the next day. So you can see that there's a lot more to wrestling in the African framework than just physically grappling with somebody. Nonetheless, we weren't able to bring him. I should say that, but mainly because he wanted to come, we couldn't make it happen. So we had a Hawaiian kahuna, chief kahuna, in fact, Hale Makua, and to have somebody like that who was a traditional native Hawaiian chief and spiritual leader, did a lot for the men there. We too had, we did a labyrinth. We had traced ourselves to the labyrinth. We had literally had a water. We had a baptismal renewal. So yeah, we had a men's retreat to kind of begin to tap into a level of spirituality that men in the diaspora frequently do not link themselves up with. With that, at our retreat, there was actually two women there. One of them was a Senegalese woman named Umi Saba. And she says it happens even in Senegal. When the men get together for their own sort of spiritual practices in Senegal, there's always a woman present. Whether it's in some way, she is essential to that process. And we found it so in the men's retreat. So that was our only men's retreat. And like I said, Cosaan, in coming years, we hope to do more of that, and to get possibly greater participation than we got at that time. But we know that things start small, and we accept that. So that was essential to the mission of Cosaan. That's how we came. That's why we even created the foundation, is to begin to delve into and experience these collective spiritual gatherings in that way, as a way to strengthen spiritually as well as mentally, both men and women and men. So, like I said, those in outline form are some of the things that Cosaan has been doing since 1996. And as I say, the last thing was our participation in, and we actually helped fund to a significant degree, the Nile Valley Conference in 2011. And so, like I said, our activities are ongoing.
Right, and our current activity again is we're trying to send someone to Egypt, to Kemet, this summer. You got about 5 more minutes. If you would like to try to enter, we check with our technical advisor. Is anyone? All right.
We've never done this before, by the way. This live streaming is new. Even this webinar series that we started back in December, that is a new departure for us. This live streaming, and as you could see, we had some technical difficulties with this live streaming that we didn't anticipate. We apologize for that. But if we do it again, I think we will know what to avoid in the way of technical difficulties. But we thought it was worth doing. Especially because this was going to be the drawing for a raffle drawing for the trip to Egypt. Never done that before. So like I said, we're kind of stepping out on faith and trying new things. And we are successful in doing well in certain aspects of it, not so successful in other aspects of it, but it's a learning process. I saw a quote not too long ago that the difference between a master and a novice is that a master has failed more times than the novice has even thought possible. So the whole point is difficulty and failure by definition is what is at the essence of growth and development. And we have certainly experienced that ever since 1996. So that's why we have not let ourselves get shall we say, downcast by, let alone inhibited by failures of various kinds, small, large. And we've had probably as many successes as failures, maybe even a little more. But we have felt this urge, this need, this incentive to continue. Because as I have myself learned many times, you never learn from your successes, ever. Your successes don't teach you anything. Your failures do. Like I said, we've had our share of both. And we continue, and we learn from them, and we enjoy what we're doing, even especially when we can learn from the failures. Don't want to dwell on that too much, but as I say, we're almost at the point of drawing for the Egypt trip study tour, July 24th to August 4th. Those of you who do not get drawn, there's still time to join the tour. You have until May 15th. If you're at all inclined to join the tour, we certainly encourage that. I always say that going to Egypt or Kemet is for people of African descent of the same quality and importance as Muslims going to Mecca. And it's hard to explain why that would be until you actually get to Egypt. Once you get to Egypt, Kemet, the Nile Valley, then it doesn't even have to be explained. The experience of being there itself teaches that. It is not only a matter of seeing the monuments and everything and the temples, and we also do lectures every night. We spend time in the Nubian village, and as I say, we're going to go to 2 active excavation sites. So it's more than just seeing all the great sites and all the great ruins, far more than that. And it is a kind of a life experience. At least people who have been say so. And this will be my 10th trip. My friend Anthony Karak Browder has been 50 times. So there are a few who have been, dozens of times, and there's a reason for that. They are drawn back there again and again, over and over again. So where are we now?
Well, we've had a couple more donations, and I appreciate it. I don't have all the names. I remember seeing Ife Robinson, thank you, Ife, and Sydney Smith, thank you. There was one other one that I missed, but thank you all. You got about 2 more minutes.
We're drawing this out to the very last minute, as you can see. And, we are going to the very end for this drawing. But we have those who have contributed by buying tickets. We appreciate it. We do. It just shows support for what we're doing. And we're thankful for that. We're grateful for that. We don't take it for granted. So whether you bought one ticket, some people just bought one $2 ticket. Others bought $20 and $30 worth of tickets, and we're grateful for everybody's level of contribution. You know, you know, you know, in a way, it's kind of you know, it's kind of suspenseful for us too. Who is going to be that lucky one? That one name that comes out. I know friends of mine who have contributed, they say, oh boy, you know, I'm praying that it's going to be me, you know. And I'm saying, I don't have anything to say about that. I said, yeah, I guess I'm praying too, but then I have to say that to everybody. But so this is going to happen soon, and we be kind of suspenseful but exciting. And as I say, we have never done this before, and we'll see how this goes to see if we ever do it again, both in terms of the drawing and in terms of the participation, etc.
And remember that even if you have not been selected, if you don't win the actual drawing, win the trip, you will get the poems for a donation of $10 or more. And we just thank everyone for their donations in any amount. Also, everybody who bought something over the last 2 months since March has been entered. We had that on our website. So everybody who purchased anything from charlessfinch.com, Kenty Publications, has been entered into this drawing.
Here's the reason why I had to do that. We may as well be candid about this and frank. We didn't know this when we started out. We only found this halfway through. Many of you bought these tickets via PayPal, and that's the way we did it. And we were just moving along, sailing along with that, until PayPal contacted us and says, you can't do this anymore. And they said, it's gambling. We consider it gambling, and we will not allow this to be done by PayPal anymore. Well, it was a shock to us. We had no idea, you know. And we did that completely without any sense that this was the case. So those after about, I don't know, March or so, who wanted to get raffle tickets, they couldn't do it through PayPal anymore. And that's the reason why we hit on this other solution, probably not as good as PayPal. Just anybody who bought anything, we would give them a raffle ticket as part of that pay, you know, as part of what they paid for. So, or people could just send in their payments via mail. And we're sorry about that, but we live and learn, you know. And we had no idea that PayPal had this prohibition about raffles or lotteries. We found out, and anybody else who's watching this and is contemplating doing a raffle or a lottery, don't do it through PayPal. It's not, then they won't let you. So that's a word to the wise is sufficient on that. And we learned that the hard way. And if we ever do this again, we'll have to do it differently. That's all we can say. So anyway, oh yeah, there is another web there. You know, we are continuing our webinar series. Okay, the next one will be May 17th. Actually, that will be another 2-part webinar, and that will be ancient and digital African science and technology. That's going to be kind of an interesting webinar because the way in which we are going to, the way in which I deal with the whole idea of African science goes beyond just empirical science. Okay, we will go into arenas that stretch the boundaries of the definition of science, quite honestly. And that, if any of you have ever read my book, some of you have, The Star of Deep Beginnings, you know that is in essence my attitude towards science. Science is a word that just means knowledge. That's all it means or ever meant. It's only in the last 500 years that it became to mean a kind of knowledge limited by empirical investigation and experimentation. But in its original meaning, it just meant knowledge. And that is our approach to it. And that's going to come out in the webinar. Again, that's May 17th. The second one will be the following week, I think. I think we will do that the following week, May 24th. Ancient and traditional African science and technology. We've already done medicine. Although one of the other things we want to do, we're going to think about doing, is a webinar, an expanded webinar on Coumba Lamba USA. Now you saw a little bit today, okay, a few slides and things we talked about, but there's so much more we could say about that experience, a whole lot more. We may even do a webinar on that amplifies and expands what we talked about today. But again, the next webinar is May 17th, Sunday, 3 p.m. as always. And I think our technical glitches will have cleared up by then. We got to the place where our webinars were moving along very well, and so we were a little kind of taken aback a little bit by our technical problems for this live streaming. Nonetheless, ancient African and traditional science and technology, and we will look at African science in its totality, not just, as I say, the technical and empirical and experimental aspects of science. Not only in ancient Egypt, which it is there, of course, but elsewhere in Africa as well. And there are surprising things in that one finds out. You got to understand that from the point of view of archaeology, Africa is the least investigated arena in the world. Just in a place like the northern Sudan, which was Kush, there are a million mounds that are archaeologically significant. Fewer than 5% of them have ever been touched by the spade. You could spend the next 500 years minimally, longer, but let's just say 500 years, digging incessantly in Africa, day after day, year after year, and never excavate or dig up everything there is to see, archaeologically speaking. Cities, towns, temples, monuments. Egypt, of course, Kemet, of course, Kush. Kush is the next great archaeological frontier. Probably as much archaeology, significant archaeology in Kush, which is in northern Sudan, as there was and is in Egypt. I know that my friend Anthony Karak Browder is considering going into Sudan for the purpose of conducting some digs there. Anyway, that's the fascinating thing about Africa. You can't run out of things to discover, things to learn. Not just in the Nile Valley. The Nile Valley is kind of obvious in some ways, but elsewhere in Africa as well. And the thing that struck me when I was in Egypt last year is that we went to this archaeological dig that is being co-directed on the one hand by Elena Pishikova and Anthony Karak Browder together. The bus comes up on a road and stops, and you walk about 100 yards over barren ground, and you go to the excavation sites. After the second day, and you're seeing all of this fantastic excavation taking place before your very eyes and showing things that have never been found in Egypt before. Okay, and you're walking back across this barren ground to the road where the bus is, and then, at least for me, a sudden intuition hit me, and I stopped right where I was. And I realized that if I could dig right then and there, down 10, 20, 50 feet, I would find a village or a tomb or a temple or ruins. In other words, there is almost no place in Egypt where you won't find such things. If you are digging anywhere, you just practically start digging almost anywhere and you'd find something. Remember, those people were building monuments for 4,000 years, longer really. But let's just talk about the dynastic period. From about 4200 BC to 30 BC. They were building monuments. Feast or famine, war or peace, stability or chaos, they are building all the time. They never stopped. And most of that is still buried. I would say 75 to 90% of what is still available, what it can be found in Egypt, is still buried under the sands, maybe more. You know, we know about the pyramids, we know about the temples. These are surface structures, and there's so much more beneath the surface, more beneath the surface even than there is above the surface. It's a fascinating thing about, and as I say, we haven't even touched hardly Kush, which is northern Sudan. It has not. The archaeologists have pretty much stayed out of there, with some rare exceptions. There is, someone said they think of Nubio Kush as kind of a second-rate Egypt. No, because that's where Egypt came from, and the people of Egypt and the Egyptians knew it and basically said it. There were, the name of our foundation, of our business is called Kenti Publications, Khenti. Kenti is a word that I chose because it is a word in the ancient Egyptian language that means south. It also means first or chief, okay, or paramount, all right? So, in other words, the ancient Egyptians looked south to their beginnings, to the first things were south. When they made maps, instead of orienting themselves north like we do, they oriented themselves south. In fact, the south was always at the top of maps until about 800 years ago. So what happened is Europe, after about the medieval period, literally turned the world upside down in their maps. So what you now thinking as a normal orientation for maps is really upside down compared to the way maps used to be made. All right, the world, the south was always top, and ancient Egyptians thought that way and said so. Why? Because they came from the south. Their word for east is the same as, it was exactly the same word they used for left. Their word for right is exactly the same word they used for west. Now the west could only be on the right, and the east could only be on the left if you're facing south. And all their traditions talk about how the children of the sons of Horus came from the south, as did many of their important deities. There is a director of antiquities. At first, people thought that he had been removed after Morsi had been removed. His name is Zahi Hawass. No, he's back, and he flatly denies that there could have been any black pharaohs. That there were black people were not in Egypt. It had nothing to do with Egypt, nothing. And that when you see black people represented in Egypt, he says that's all that is symbolic. That's symbolic of the fertility of Osiris. Talking about a threadbare, worn out, bankrupt idea, and yet he's trying to revive it and resurrect it. He's always got money, by the way. And he's back. He's not back in power exactly of the antiquities, but he now is back, has a office there. And those who know him and know his history just kind of groaned when that happened, but one carries on. Right? Especially the one he hates the most is Robert Bauval. Robert Bauval and his colleagues Thomas Schock and Graham Hancock have shown that among other things, that ancient Egypt, like for example, the Sphinx can be dated back to, let me think now, 10,500 BC. That's almost 13,000 years ago. That's 10,000 years older, more than 10,000 years older than anybody ever gave Egypt credit for in terms of its existence. And yet, the evidence, when you look at it carefully and without prejudice, is there. And Bauval has done that. Schock has done that. Graham Hancock has done that. In fact, Schock says the whole business of what we call the Great Year, the 26,000 Great Year, starts 10,909 BC, 11,000 BC. He says I remember the ancient Egyptians themselves said that their history goes back from about the time of Christ or thereabouts, 36,500 years earlier than that. That's what the Egyptians say about their history. All right. At the very least, it apparently goes back about 13,000 years ago. Maybe not the dynastic period, but Egyptian civilization. For example, the Sphinx being an example of that. So, okay. I think we have got a winner. I think we've got some fanfare. We don't have a winner.
Not yet.
What do we have?
We're going to have the drawing.
Oh, we're gonna have the drawing,
right
but there's
now.
gonna be some fanfare with it, I take it. Okay.
I just want to say that the individual who will be doing the drawing is our friend and neighbor, Ann Mealy, Mrs. Ann Mealy. And Ann did not enter the raffle herself. She wanted to at the last minute, but she said, no, I'm going to draw for you because, we want you to keep this above board, and so that nobody who has actually entered the raffle is involved in the drawing. Also, Ann is not a family member.
That's the other thing.
Family members were not allowed
to join. They could not buy a raffle ticket either.
So none of our family members could be included in this raffle. Ann has no affiliation with Kenty Publications or Cosaan. So she's just a good friend. So Ann, come on over.
I'm a little nervous and excited myself. all I can do is watch.
Take this jar. Can you show the jar?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Show that we have the jar.
Let Ann show it.
Okay.
This is Ann Mealy.
Okay.
Did you just hold it up a little bit, Ann?
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it looks like. Okay. We got a little bit of fanfare. Come on now, add to it. Yeah. I do have a friend here, but he's not in the. Are you the drawing or not? Yeah, he is. But he's not doing any drawing. He's doing it. Okay. Just draw one ticket. One. No, give it to him. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it?
Malvin.
Are you kidding me? Malvin?
Malvin, baby, got the ticket.
Is that possible? Okay, this was over above board, and he's a friend of mine, but I didn't. Really?
Now, what's your last name?
Merkson.
Malvin Merkson.
Oh my God!
Has won the raffle.
I didn't even know he had put a ticket in there. Did he? Okay, just so people understand, he didn't touch this jar, did he?
No,
he bought a lot of tickets.
He bought a lot of tickets, but he didn't touch it. I just want people to understand, he didn't touch the jar. He didn't put his hand in the jar. He didn't shake the jar. He just bought a lot of tickets. I'm as surprised as he is. Look at him over there. He's just smiling. Oh, well, congratulations, Malvin.
Thank you.
It's funny that he would decide to take this day to come over here to be with us. So I think he must have felt something.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
come on now so we can.
Yes. Take your bows, Malvin.
Thank you, Ann.
Have a seat. This is a very good friend of mine, Malvin Merkson. We work together in a couple of different ways, and he's going to Kemet with us.
Going to Kemet. Exciting.
All right. Well, thank you. But we want to thank everyone who has donated.
And let me be sure. And we saw Ann mixing up the tickets. I want to be sure people understand that this really was above board. She shook up those tickets.
We showed it.
Yeah, I think we did. Okay. It just happened, but it did happen.
Wow.
She stuck her hand in. All right.
Yeah.
This is the way it works. But we want to thank everyone who participated, everybody who supported us, because we are because we have to do donations for we are now our raffle tickets really were not raffle tickets. You were entered into the drawing because you made a donation. Those who donated that way, it will now be considered tax deductible. So we have your names, and I thank you for that tax deductible contribution. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed this explanation of Coumba Lamba USA and what may be coming in the future. For those of you that came to Coumba Lamba USA, we thank you for coming, and we hope you enjoyed this little flashback into that experience. So thank you, Mtumwa, for your last minute donation. Thank you so much. Ms. Smith, thank you for your last minute donation. We just want to thank everyone who supported us and donated. Thank you so much.
Again, remember the next webinar is May 17th.
Right.
Ancient Traditional African Science and Technology. Hope to see you there. Thank you for being with us today. And my heart is still fluttering. Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.